the targets to two main variables, right? You have growth or revenue, top line, and you have profit, bottom line. And too often brands want both at the same time. And so for us, we like to understand from the words of the client, what's your primary focus? Once we can understand what that primary focus is, we can basically work backwards and say, okay, it sounds like your primary objective is revenue or your primary objective is profit. That kind of teaches us and allows us to build the building blocks.
Welcome to the Ecom Breakthrough Podcast. Are you ready to unlock the full potential and growth in your business? You've already crossed 7 figures in sales, but the challenge is knowing how to take your business to the next level. Join Josh Hadley, an 8-figure ecom business owner and investor, as he interviews highly successful business owners. Get ready, because you're going to learn specific actions you can take today to help your business reach its full potential and leave a lasting impact on the world.
Welcome to the Ecom Breakthrough Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Hadley, where I interview the top business leaders in e-commerce. Past guests include Kevin King, Aaron Cordovez, and Michael E. Gerber, author of The E-Myth. Today, I am speaking with Ari Zecher, and he is going to be talking about how to simplify complex variables in business and e-commerce to be able to achieve your goals. This episode is brought to you by Ecom Breakthrough, where I specialize in investing in and scaling 7-figure e-commerce brands to 8 figures and beyond. If you're an ambitious e-commerce entrepreneur looking for a partner who can help take your business to the next level, I bring hands-on experience, strategic insights, and the resources needed to fuel your growth. So if you or someone you know is ready to scale or looking for an investment partner, reach out to me directly at josh@ecombreakthrough.com. That's ecom with 2 M's. And let's turn your dreams into reality. Today, I am excited to introduce you all to Ari Zecher. Ari is a former special operations commander turned entrepreneur and the co-founder of Deep Sea Commerce, a boutique Amazon agency. Known for his disciplined leadership and strategic expertise, Ari blends creativity with data to help brands scale and thrive. So with that introduction, welcome to the show, Ari.
Thank you, Josh. Quite the intro. And I can't believe that you actually read the whole thing, that it's not pre-recorded, man.
Hey,
It's
well,
amazing.
I gotta do it live right here with you, you know.
Super authentic. Yeah. Now I believe it.
Now it's the real deal. There
real
it is.
deal.
It is not recorded pre or post. It is done.
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, all right. Excited to have you on. Tell me a little bit more about your agency, Deep Sea Commerce, and what you've been working on there. What are the type of brands that you're working on? What are the services that you provide? And I want people to just understand the context before we get into the real meat and potatoes to drive these businesses forward.
Totally. So Deep Sea Commerce, as you said in the intro, it's a boutique Amazon agency. We're striving to be the best operator that there is out there. And so we kind of break things down into operations, advertising, and creative. And we fuel that with a foundation of analytics that is the most basic version of the standard. And that doesn't mean like simple, it means trying to kind of turn over every rock and understand the basics across the board. We offer creative services. We're not a kind of off-the-shelf cheap option. We really try to kind of break the system in the sense of, you know, Amazon is a landscape filled with so much clutter, so much noise. It's super competitive. Standing out with creative is so hard. And it's kind of one of the things that is fun. It's still fun to do. And so trying to lead with creative. And then, you know, for a few select clients that kind of want further management, we align with growth and do a full operations to creative iteration to advertising, DSP, the whole picture. And we're very small. We like to work with few clients that really want growth. Yeah.
Love that. So if a brand reaches out to you, said one of the first things that you're doing is like looking at the data. What are those data points that you're looking at, and why is that so important?
Such a great leading question, Josh. Yeah, so we talked about this earlier. You know, the when you're thinking about kind of data and all of the noise out there in terms of like things to focus on and shiny objects, it's really about disseminating the targets to two main variables, right? You have growth or revenue, top line, and you have profit, bottom line. And too often brands want both at the same time. And so for us, we like to understand from the words of the client, what's your primary focus? Once we can understand what that primary focus is, we can basically work backwards and say, okay, it sounds like your primary objective is revenue or your primary objective is profit. That kind of teaches us and allows us to build the building blocks, which oftentimes is overwhelming for many brands and it's hard to focus. So we like to think about it in terms of a simple math problem, right? So in order to get to revenue, you have traffic times conversion rate equals orders. You have orders times average order value equals revenue, right? Two really simple, tied and interconnected kind of equations. If you focus on any one of those variables, you will inevitably achieve some sort of incremental growth for revenue. Conversely, on the profit side of things, you have your contribution margin 1, right? You can't really change landed costs, especially not us. And then we start to think about, okay, the return percentage, the tacos, and then you get into all of these weeds of, your subscriber base, your ads versus organic, and you can kind of funnel into these different elements, which oftentimes people are like, I need to focus on my CAC, or I need to focus on my LTV, or I need to focus on my subscription growth, or the churn rate, or all of these details, which are really very, very, very valid. But again, the starting point for us is understanding how do each of those variables tie into a major KPI, tie into a more major KPI that affect the primary versus secondary objective, which is revenue and profit.
I love that. And I think what you touched on, it's very simplistic, right? But I think it is truly like a leading indicator, right? And I think that's what you've discovered. Revenue is actually a lagging metric, right? And so is net profit. It is a lagging metric of, it's basically a result of everything that you've done over the past month or even 6 months before, right?
100%.
So the focus is, as you mentioned, hey, how much traffic am I getting? What is the conversion rate? What is my average order value? Like, these are all things that you can influence. So I'm curious, Ari, like, tell me, let's say I'll do 2 different scenarios for you here, right? First, I'm going to be a brand owner that comes to you and says, hey, I want to grow top line revenue. Here's my brand. What do I do? Right? So let's take that scenario. Tell me, like, what's the playbook if you're working with a brand that comes in and is like, I want to grow revenue. How do you systematize and break things down for them to say, like, okay, here are the levers that we're going to pull, and here's how we're going to do this?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, it really depends on, so that's a great starting point. And it's like a perfect kind of leading segue into kind of what the structure looks like. When we look at any brand, and it could be a brand new brand or a brand that's doing, $10 million or $5 million a year, we try to like understand what is the baseline of the variables that I laid out earlier, right? What are the actual building blocks? Now, if we take one example, right? If we look at traffic, say that a listing is getting 10,000 sessions a month, right? Understanding where does that come from? And I'm gonna go back to your question, but a tangent that oftentimes people kind of go off on are, TikTok Shop is this brand new avenue of traffic, and let's like mastermind and do all these amazing things, which is it is a gold mine, right? But understanding that TikTok Shop eventually leads to branded searches or buyer intent searches, aka like keywords, which funnel into sessions, right? So understanding how does everything relay back into these buckets. So for us, again, going back to the baseline process, we've built tools to basically understand all search terms that relate to a niche. And so we go into the thousands of competitors. We use SQP data, really everything that we can kind of find to understand what does the entire niche look like. Once we've done that, we can kind of bucket things into relevancy brackets. Similar to what Data Dive does and a lot of tools out there, we're trying to understand, are these search terms relevant based on lagging metrics, right? The competitors that we're analyzing, are they relevant to these keywords? That little asterisk there sometimes is a cyclical bias. That's just like a side note. But once we understand that, we group the relevant search terms, branded or non-branded, into n-grams. Once we've done that, we can basically say, okay, here's my plan of attack. I'm going to focus on this group of 100 keywords that all relate to this one root or n-gram, right? And that's just kind of one example of like, how do we focus on, if you want to achieve growth, if you tell me I want to get from X to Y by Z, I'm going to work backwards from that. And I'm going to say, your conversion rate is amazing right now, or it's good right now. Let's focus on traffic. And then conversely, again, thinking about, are you upselling? Do you have a large catalog? Does the customer understand what your brand is? And this is also is another tangent, potentially, but I think too often we think of creative on Amazon as as like tiles that we need to fill, right? We need to hit the box of like benefits, us versus them, etc. And sometimes that's true, but oftentimes the cohesiveness of a brand and how the products relate to each other, how product A is used after product B, etc., that needs to be conveyed within creative. And so again, I'm like going off on a lot of different angles there, but the audit process of understanding what is the baseline, what's currently happening, where are the sources of things, how can we bucket things into these building blocks, and then understand what is the easiest and simplest lever to pull that will affect the goals that the brands want to achieve.
So does it really boil down to just kind of three different metrics that you're looking at? It's traffic, it's your conversion rate, and then it's your average order value. Are those the main three things that you're focused on? And then what are you doing? Like, are you seeing one of those as more powerful in driving, better top line results than another, right? Is it like, hey, the magic bullet is like everybody that comes in, we just raise their price by 10%. And most of the time, nothing changes other than they get more money. Like, tell me what's been your experience that way.
Yeah, I mean, so like it's never like a one size fits all, right? Like you can play with price. Most niches on Amazon are price elastic, right? Like price does change things, and so if you increase price, you're going to offset conversion rate, and then you're not going to see growth, right? Sometimes there are those exceptions to the rules where increasing price actually provides a premium and kind of helps with the buying decision, but that's rare. In terms of kind of how we currently act, it's more of, what does the opportunity look like? Is your conversion rate low? Do you have a subscribable product? Are you currently doing subscriptions? How do those things relay into conversion rate? How does the untapped potential of search terms, long tail or roots, how do those feed into traffic? Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. All right. So that's on the revenue front. Let's say I'm a brand owner that comes to you, says, hey, I'm focused on profitability. Over the last year, Amazon has raised fees, increased competition. They're charging less for their product. Like I've had inflation on my cost of goods sold. However, I'm having to reduce my prices overall. Tariffs, same thing. So it's just like margin compression after margin compression. That's my issue. How do I bring more profit back into the business? How do you approach brands like that are coming to you?
I mean, so number one is like setting like a realistic expectation. I think the profit margin of 2017, it was not the profit margin of 2019, it was not the profit margin of 2023 and 2025, right? Like margins are coming down, and you do need more capital to begin with to have real dollars cash flow. So that's like number one, right? If you want to achieve a 20% profit margin and you're in the 7 to 8 figure brand, like it's going to be hard with OpEx. That's number one. Number two is like, again, thinking about how do I break down the building blocks of profit, right? Now, tacos is an obvious lever. Return percentage is another lever. That's a lever that people don't often kind of pull and think closely enough about. So everyone talks about, use Helium 10's review scraper and kind of understand what your competition is. But on the creative side, and this also speaks to CVR or on the growth factor piece, but like, are you understanding why people are returning the products? Are you understanding, what is the consistent reason why you're getting negative reviews? I can go into some case studies there, but those two levers, again, there are multiple like values and sub items within those two pieces that an agency or a brand can kind of control. But I would say like those are the two focal points: tacos and then return percentage, and how that relates to your profit margin.
Interesting. Let's dive into some of those case studies then.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, from the return percentage, we had this great brand, which we're still managing, amazing brand. It's this copper water bottle, and has all these health benefits. And copper, as some people know, turns green when it oxidizes. And there were many. I think at some point the return percentage was between 8 to 10%. And if you think about, a normal healthy Amazon brand profit margin at like, I don't know, between 15 to 20%, contribution margin 3 after ads, having a 10% like write-off on the returns over a year is a huge, huge piece. And so that was a huge focus point for us. And so again, it's about how do you understand, why people are returning the product, why people are surprised. Because again, it's about how do you convey everything that there is to convey about the product, the experience, the benefits, the inspiration behind the brand in like 3 seconds once they're on the PDP. When they're in the SERP, it's like, I saw John Aspinall say it was like 0.3 seconds. Like you have no time.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? And again, I can get into the tangent of like creative landscape, but specifically for the case study example, we were like, okay, copper turns green. Iconic. What's a very known iconic green thing? Statue of Liberty. Let's use that in messaging. Just like the Statue of Liberty, your bottle will turn green. It means that it's actually copper as opposed to another heavy metal, And so that was one very kind of clear example where over time, and again, this is not kind of, quick hacks. Over time, return percentages went down to a normal rate. I think we got it down to 4% over 2 months. But again, the creative process of understanding that, of looking, of asking questions, of being humble about what do I not know? What is my competition doing right? What are some, what is the actual customer? What are they speaking about? That took a lot of humility and asking questions, not giving all the answers, not saying, oh, you got to like fit these boxes of slots of like, okay, slot 1 is benefits, slot 2 is XYZ. Yeah.
Love that. And I very just like pragmatic approach to identifying, hey, here's the issue. How do we resolve it with creative that allows people to understand before they actually purchase the product? So
totally.
I love that.
Yeah.
What other case studies do you have for us?
So before I started Deep Sea Commerce, I can go into a little bit of my backstory if that's productive.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So yeah, and feel free to kind of stop me if I'm going too deep into a rabbit hole. But back in the day, I started selling on Amazon in 2017. I was doing private label. I was learning from Brandon Young. I was learning from Jungle Scout, like classic $1 million case study stuff. Started a bunch of brands, got into wholesale, scaled really fast in wild ways, usually like horizontal ways where I got very spread thin. I got spread thin. And during the COVID non-essential item kind of saga, where it went from Prime Day shipping, I think it was like March 2020, where all of a sudden conversion rates went to like 0%, and it was like your product will be delivered in August, 4 months down the line. My own brands just took a huge hit, and I realized at that point that I needed to be really proud about the product that I was selling. And there's this kind of untold message within the Amazon community, and it's a fascinating community where you don't talk about what you sell, which is amazing as a side topic to kind of dive into that. Like sociologically, it's pretty amazing. But I was like, I don't want to tell my grandmother what I sell. You know what I mean? And that fundamentally was like, okay, wake up moment. What do I actually want to do? And why am I doing this? And ultimately, it kind of goes back to military service and kind of helping people, being in a really extreme situations and being able to kind of give a hand to someone that needs help. Back to the case study, that was a wild tangent. Sorry, Josh. But I was kind of pushed into this consulting gig for a private equity firm that was investing in PPE. And again, it was around the same time that my products got de-essentialized, if that's the right term. And karma or whatever kind of fit. And they were like, help us scale on Amazon. I said, the wave is now curling. If you're not currently selling a 3-ply mask, it's a bad time to start selling a 3-ply mask. And they were like, we have $5 billion to spend. Do what you want. And again, getting to the case study piece of it, I listened to them and I was like, okay, if you guys want to do this, let's do this. Let's compete with Lysol and Clorox and all these giant brands within the PPE space. And it relates back to inventory. So we would have days where Fauci would announce, masks on or masks off, and the reaction, the market would just swing. We'd have, $10,000 days to $100,000 days. And it really kind of forced us to understand inventory. And that's obvious. That's like a simplistic takeaway from the story here, but really kind of where it kind of gets into more detail. And it really has shaped how we operate with a deep sea commerce with inventory management, is understanding velocity, understanding available stock, and how those things as a foundation kind of relate to profit and also relate to revenue. It's pretty obvious. Again, getting into the actual details, without a certain amount of available days of stock, Amazon is not going to take a chance on you, which means that your TACoS is going to go up because your organic ranks are going to drop. Without the inventory, you're not going to have the exposure, which means that you're not going to have the traffic. It all kind of, within the flywheel, it all kind of speaks back to those two major goals. But yeah, that was definitely kind of a war story. And yeah, needing to kind of learn how do we react fast? How do we understand the effects of staying in stock and not just, yeah. Anyways, hopefully that's a good answer for you.
I love that. So are you saying, I think what I caught there at the end is that by staying in stock and having enough inventory, it allows you to stay organically ranked. Are you saying that, in your opinion, part of Amazon's algorithm is once you start dipping below, I don't know, maybe it's 30, 15 days worth of inventory on hand at FBA centers, that they almost start deprioritizing you in organic search results?
Yeah, so I can get into that. Yeah, so what we found, and this is a great case study. What we found is the one caveat here is that if you have a large catalog with hundreds of SKUs, or you have a parent-child relationship with 50 SKUs, there's usually going to be the hero ASIN that does 80% of the sales that this is actually relevant for. But essentially, there's a certain amount of available days of stock, and that's not counting FC processing, FC transfer, inbound stock. It's the actual available days of stock that Amazon is looking at, and it's saying, I'm going to allow for my customers, Amazon's customers, to see this product. And the logic behind that, and it kind of gets into a wild topic of geo-ranking, which I can talk a little bit about the tools that we've built to kind of support that. Essentially, there's 300 plus FCs in the US, and the FCs all support a certain proximity of zip codes, right? If I'm in Philadelphia, there's an FC that's supporting my zip code. My zip code, if I search for X product on Amazon, the zip code bar has to be inputted. Otherwise, you get this generic nonsense. My search is directly affected to the inventory that can support my purchase. And so again, we don't have control necessarily over where inventory goes to what FCs. Now they're making it complicated with 5 or more, and all of the nonsense that Amazon is doing with placement fees and non-placement fees. You can play with the origin destination, putting that address in. That's all hacks. But essentially, what we found is that if we stay above 45 days of stock, which takes a huge amount of capital to maintain. And one warning, right? Cash flow is king here. You don't want to overexpose yourself. But if you calculate your available days of stock based on a velocity that is normalized, and I can go into that as well, what we found is that in the long run, Amazon will reward our organic rankings. And in return, tacos will slowly start to come down because we're converting at a higher rate, which means that our CPCs decrease. And that's just a flywheel effect. If we can maintain that, it's golden. And we've had, a case study is an example. We've had literally hundreds of occurrences where hero SKUs go out of stock, keyword ranks flop, tacos goes up to 25%. It takes us a month to bring tacos back down to 10%. That's just kind of how it works. And it's based on this understanding of Amazon needs to distribute inventory. And yeah.
Interesting. All right. So dive deeper into how you're actually getting those measurements. So like as you work with clients, like how are you normalizing velocity then? Because I think like what you just shared, like you're saying, hey, you should keep 45 days on hand in FBA in centers at all times, right? So how do you do that? How are you managing that?
Yeah. So within the org, we're a developer with Amazon, right? So we're drawing in Amazon API data every single day. And again, this is part of kind of like the foundational aspect of kind of what you need to kind of put into the system. We can talk about system later. But essentially it's, what are my historical sales by unit? Looking at different look back windows. We look at 7, 14, 30, 60, 90. And we also have kind of further look back windows for special cases with seasonalities. But essentially like looking at those look back windows. Then what we do is we look at days where there was no stock or there was a lower amount of stock in that look back period. And then we normalize the weighted average. And I'm getting into like some math here, but in essence, to simplify it, we're trying to understand what is the true daily velocity of a product within a certain look back window. And then we just divide that by the amount of available stock, not total stock. And if that number is anywhere from 30 to 45, we're in the yellow. 45 to 60, we're in the green. 60 and above, oftentimes you're way overexposed. And again, the asterisk here is that for catalogs with thousands of SKUs, or parent-child relationships where you have 30 variations, you can't reasonably do that, and it doesn't work that way. You have a hero SKU or 2 or 3 that make up the bulk of it. If you focus on that, the flywheel effect is very significant.
So I think like to sum it all up, you're saying, hey, focus on your SKUs that are doing 80% of your revenue. Focus on always having 45 to 60 days worth of inventory at Amazon. That's what you're kind of like always targeting.
Exactly. And for us, we send out a sheet every single day so that everyone can see what the actual value is. And that speaks to advertising, right? If we're not within that realm, it means that CPCs are inherently going to be higher, which means that we're just not going to hit the targets. And oftentimes, right, it's like a chicken and the egg, right? People want growth without inventory. And you can't help them if they don't have the inventory. At the same time, inventory equals cash flow issues and capital exposure.
Yeah, I love that. All right, that I think is a great fundamental shift that I think brand owners need to understand. Are there any other like key metric or key processes, just like inventory, that you've identified that really can become like a big lever in the business, right? For a positive or a negative effect?
Yeah. I mean, I think AOV is an underlooked feature, and it's one of the easiest. It's one of the easiest ones to play with, right? Like essentially, you're not looking at a parent-child relationship and seeing like what's my average price here. You're looking at you did $1,000,000 and you sold 1,000,000 units, right? Your AOV is 1, right? If you did $1,000,000, you sold 500,000, your AOV is 2. And so understanding how that actually works and understanding, why does a customer purchase more than one product or product A and product B that are not similar? And basically structuring initiatives and structuring actions that are simple. For an example, buy one, get a certain percentage off, or play with creative. Make sure that, if you have a more profitable product with a higher price point, make sure that that is in your brand store, your A+, your listing images. People do not, again, this is also a cliched statement, but people do not play with conversion rate. They do not play with creative enough. And I know a little bit about your brand. I know how complex the creative aspect is, and people really need to understand that creative is not I'm going to change my main image, twice a year, which is like a checkbox. It's not that at all, right? It's about like, what am I trying to achieve? Again, going back to the basics. Am I trying to achieve revenue, or am I trying to achieve profit? And understanding how can I change things and how can I play with things and constantly test things so that I'm trying so that I'm getting the results. And I don't just mean main image optimizations, which is great, right? I'm talking about how can I upsell and how can I quantify changes to the listing images, changes to adding this profitable SKU, as I mentioned earlier, in your A+. Thinking about your store as a true D2C site, right? We all saw Mary Ruth Organics, with the I forget what they called it, but it was like some specialized branded landing page that was like not Amazon within Amazon. Amazon is going into that area of just like trying to confuse / mesh everything together so that buying online is buying online. You're not thinking about, is it Amazon or not? And they're embedding themselves in so many different places, and we can talk about that. But understanding, how can you build a landing page within your store, and do it for a week, do it for a month. See if you can actually see the AOV increase. Track that on a weekly basis. It's really simple. It's definitely harder said than done. But again, tracking things regularly, understanding what are the inputs, what are the leading behaviors or the leading actions that kind of will feed into that is fundamental in the space for sure.
So you've got me interested here on the different ways that you're using creative, whether it be secondary images, A+ content, brand story. How are you, like, give me some specific examples, like how are you using that, or what are the creative ways that you're using that creative to increase AOV? And maybe are there specific brands that you would say like these guys crush it? Like go check out their stores, go look at their secondary images, go look at their A+ content, because like these guys are constantly upselling. Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, so the first part of your question in terms of like specific examples, it's as simple as, if I'm searching for a water bottle, I'm going to experience the PDP. If I decided to click into this brand, I'm going to experience it from top down. I'm going to look at the main image. I'm going to look at the social proof, the price. We are using a specialized software that is eye tracking. So it's understanding kind of where do customers focus in on, and that's kind of how we build creative in a certain sense. Obviously, it's not that scientific, but understanding, okay, they go immediately to price, or they go immediately to the videos. There's lots of case studies on that stuff. But understanding that, the experience is you get to the landing page. Sorry, you get to the PDP. You scroll down. You look at the swatches if there are swatches. You look at the brand story. You look at the A+. At that point, when a customer is needing the validation, to purchase your product versus others, and they're not being kind of candied away by Amazon's placements on product pages, they're already engaged with the brand. And so putting in another product, it's not necessarily confusing, and it could backfire. It could confuse the customer, right? Why am I seeing a product that I did not see at the main image? But that's a really easy example of like, test that, right? If I were to try to sell what I'm actually trying to sell on a detail page, what happens to my AOV, assuming that the price is higher. Another great example, and it's not necessarily related to AOV, but more kind of case studies about variables or case studies about certain metrics and trying to kind of increase them with creative. So subscribe and save, right? Subscribe and save is like, it's a monster on Amazon. And supplements, people just, it's a wild, wild, wild space. And people are always trying to, outbid, outgame the next guy. And the subscribe and save coupons, we're getting into like big D2C world of like, what's my cost of acquisition and how much money can I lose in a certain amount of time, and how can I offset that with a subscribe and save purchase 2, 3, 4, and what's my churn rate? It gets very, 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 very complicated. Like assuming that it's simple, right? Because again, how do you make decisions in a really complicated environment? You make the binary simple. If I'm trying to increase subscribers, obviously I can make the offer appealing. I can offer a coupon, a one-time subscribe and save off coupon. I can also, create, top of search banner ads. I can modify my creative advertising on the SERP, and funnel towards a landing page within the store where I'm showcasing this product is a subscribe and save product. I can use that words, right? There are certain limitations where you have to be careful, and Amazon will just say, no, fix that word. But again, if I'm trying to increase subscribe and savers, oftentimes people just use a coupon, right? Why not create a funnel from the search to the product page, or from the search to the store, and hone in on, I am trying to make you subscribe, and here's the creative, here is the story as to why that is.
I love that. That unlocks a lot of little golden nuggets in there. So, all right, thanks for sharing that. Are there any brands that you would say, hey, go check out these guys? They do a really good job at it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is going to be cliched, but Operators, the Operators podcast, Sean Frank, Mary Ruth Organics, those are easy examples because the guys who are running those brands are just so smart. And they are testing everything and anything. And I think, like, again, if you wanted like a really quick, what are they doing versus what should I do within different categories, check out Ridge Wallet, check out Mary Ruth Organics. I don't want to name our brands just because of privacy issues, and I wouldn't want the brand owners to get pissed. But yeah, like I would say start there, start at the best. Understand why are the best, and you'll find some anomalies, right? You'll find some brands that are not doing, the SOP for selling on Amazon. And it's good to ask questions. It's good to scratch your head and be like, I don't understand what I'm doing. Everything that they're doing. Why am I not succeeding? And oftentimes, I think that people, if they're open to being wrong and not kind of winning, they'll find some really good basic findings.
Yeah. Those are some great brands to take a look at. So Ridge Wallet, Simple Modern, and then Mary Ruth's Organics. Yeah. So there's some good inspiration, 9-figure brands to
totally.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, this has been fantastic thus far. What else have we not communicated to these 7-figure business owners that are looking to scale to 8 figures and beyond that you feel like they need to hear?
We're really big on system, and any 7-figure, 8-figure brand, or really any brand that has had issues in the past, will obviously say system is key. I could offer some of the things that we have built, which I think are very kind of fundamentally simple but structured properly. We've broken down the operating system to reactive versus proactive activities. And we've defined those activities with certain cadences. And what I mean by that is as we go through the process of things breaking on Amazon, Amazon taking things down and shutting us down and copy changing and all of these AI suggestions, it's a landscape that is ever changing and ever evolving, and the amount of things that we need to check is overwhelming. Systematizing that by putting it into buckets. What are the things that I need to check regularly? And how often do I need to check those things? So it's like, what's prone to breaking? What's prone to, like, what is really important? So a great example, we do monthly, weekly, and daily. On a weekly basis, for an example, we check that the FBA fees that we think we're being charged are actually being charged. And you are allotted 20 bin checks per month to basically verify that the product is being sized appropriately. And more often than not, we're able to shave off a couple of cents. And at scale, that's tremendous. So again, going back into the system, that's a weekly check where we've found that we've made the mistake. We have the battle scars of we're running at, we're contribution margin 2, it's considering FBA fees, and FBA fees are 465 or whatever. And then we're at a quarterly review and all of a sudden it's at 5, right? How did we not think that Amazon would screw us over and increase the FBA fee from 465 to 5 something? So having that is a really important thing. And that's just one example. Another thing is browse nodes, right? How often does Amazon shuffle categories? It's shocking, but they're constantly trying to make the buyer experience more predictable, more effective, more clear, which means that the categories and the subcategories and the subcategories are always shuffling and changing. Keywords are have relevancy to the subcategory. More often than not, a brand will come to us and be like, we were doing fine, things were growing, things were doing wonderfully, and all of a sudden we fell off a cliff. Why is that? And it could be a lot of reasons, but more often than not, there's a browse node where we're not relevant for the subcategory that Amazon has now reshuffled us to. So checking that is a great tip. But again, back into the system, thinking about what are all the things that can go wrong, / what are all the things that we want to kind of have a grip on? How important are they? How frequently should we check them? Daily, weekly, monthly. And then create a very clear space for what are all of the reactive things, the things that go wrong that we did not anticipate. And how can we create a rigid structure that's dynamically scalable so that as we run into the quicksand, and as we get hit by this and hit by this fee and low inventory fee, how do we systematize that so that there's a place and a time and a team member whose job it is to make sure that they are looking at that? And for brand owners, your target audience, who are scaling and want to achieve that growth, peace of mind and the ability to focus is just key. You need to be able to think and strategize and not be consumed with the whirlwind, with the clutter. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that is so important too. You listed things out that are so basic but so vital, right? Monitoring your FBA fees, monitoring your product GL codes, right? And that browse node. Those are simple things that can really steer you off course real quick if you're not actively monitoring those.
Totally. Review sharing, for an example, right? Child, parent, that happens all the time, right? Your social proof affects your conversion rate. Amazon can just disconnect child variations without you knowing, which will affect conversion rate tremendously. Why not check that? That's really crucial. That's a daily check,
I love that. What other things have you seen that you've implemented with a lot of your brands that has been it's basic, but it's super valuable, just like FBA fees, just like the GL codes, etc.
Yeah, another really easy one is a store byline. So right above the ratings, there's a hyperlink that says visit the brand store. Sometimes Amazon will screw things around, and that could be because of catalog work in the back end, etc. They won't link your store byline to the actual store. They'll link it to the brand search, which again is a really easy fix. There's even an automated fix within seller support, but checking that is an example. Another one is like we had this happen to us about a year ago where a client, the credit card in the ads console just would stop working and PPC would stop. Again, it's a tiny, like bureaucratic administrative fault that leads to, again, revenue, profit, sessions, tacos. Like they're fundamental. How do you let the specialists do what they do with peace of mind? So we added that to a daily check. All of the AI suggestions, for an example, that Amazon is like just constantly trying to push. And you can say, no, I don't want this, which I recommend not doing that. It's just a bad idea right now. Making sure that it's actually selected to no. Those would be a daily checks. Everything on the account health and the keeping the lights on, as I like to call it, the feedback manager, the buyer messages, return authorizations, any sort of like MFA orders, or if you guys if people have FBM or there's a lot of details. I'm happy to kind of go through each and every item, but to put it into the perspective, on a daily basis we're checking 35 items, on a weekly basis we're checking 13 items, and on a monthly basis we're checking 5 items, and that's across all accounts that we manage. And that's not to mention the intelligent automations that we have on a product basis that pushes the team notifications if things change that we're not checking, and we use softwares like Sellerize to help with that. Yeah.
So, all right. You know what is something that I bet you every brand owner that's listening right now wants access to is that checklist, right? So there's words of thought, food for thought for you. If like you had like a printable file or something that's like, these are the things we check monthly, weekly, and daily.
Totally. Hey, I mean, it's a great hook. I love to learn about people. I love to learn about challenges, and I love to learn about the brands that people sell. Back to the strange Amazon niche of people not sharing what they do. I love to learn about the product and why is your product the best. Reach out to me. I'll give you my email number, so it's all good.
So that Ari's opening up that for permission. He wants you to set up a call with him. He will share with you what he checks on a monthly, weekly, daily basis. So
absolutely.
Love it. Ari, anything else that we haven't covered yet today that you think we need to share?
So this is another hook, and I'm gonna unapologetically kind of put it in there. When you think about conversion rate and creative, you think about utilization versus optimization. Are you utilizing the entire Amazon landscape for creative input? 3D features is one of those utilization fields that is underutilized and definitely under-optimized. A really brief paragraph about this. There is 3 features that are kind of coming out and becoming much more prevalent. There's view in 3D, view in your room, and virtual try-on. Now, again, reach out to me or Google them if you want more context. I'm not going to kind of give a whole kind of breakdown of each of them, but Amazon is pushing for augmented reality shopping, and they're trying to make it so that the digital buying experience is tangible and is realer, right? Amazon is also rolling out a program where they are creating 3D models and pushing those updates without sellers knowing about them. And so you'll search for a brand and there will be 3D models on the detail page. Oftentimes people think, oh, that's great, just how Amazon will add the subscribe and save buy box without you asking. It's a very similar phenomenon, right? The issue with that is you don't have the control over the quality. Amazon is basically reading your detail pages, reading your listing images. And if your creative is not amazing, if the specs are not amazing, Amazon will do a poor job at digitally conveying to the augmented reality what your product is. So it's important to get in front of that. How do you get in front of that? You can work with people like us, who we have a direct pipeline to the Amazon QA team. So we build 3D models that are compliant with Amazon, and we can push and override the 3D models that Amazon will have inputted into those slots. And 3D models, as an anecdote, they're amazing for creative content. The designers will love you because they can play with them, they can shift them. It's not a one-to-one replacement for photography and for video and stills and UGC, obviously. But if you want to to tell the story about the product and have basically unlimited kind of artistic freedom to change and manipulate and understand the product, 3D models is the way to go. So reach out to us again if you want to learn more about 3D models. If you want to see, does your brand, is it eligible for the features that Amazon is offering? We'll do that for you for free. And just again, I love to chat and learn about, brands and stuff.
Awesome. Ari, this has been a fantastic episode. I love to leave the audience with 3 actionable takeaways from every episode. Here are the 3 actionable takeaways that I noted, but you let me know if you feel like I'm missing something here, all right? So number 1, what I have is going back to one of the first case studies that you shared, which was centered around inventory. And I think this is such a key component, especially as I know that Amazon's goal is to be able to become the site where you can purchase a product, and in their opinion, in their ideal world, in less than an hour or 2, that product is sitting on your doorstep. That's where Amazon wants to be. Now, in order to do that, you have to have inventory distributed throughout their entire network, and they're always updating it. And from what I've understood, like Amazon in Q4 of 2024, the reason why there was so much of a disaster with FC transfers and people's inventory not being in FBA available is Amazon just recently changed to a more regional network. That's what they're saying from what I've gathered. And with that, like they're trying to focus more on same day deliveries, which means you've got to have that inventory to support it. And this is now just in the last week, you are the second person that I talked to that has said, by having enough, like follow Amazon's recommendations with whatever they want you to send in. Because if you do that, they're basically trying to program it to say, hey, in order to have 1 day available inventory across our network, this is the amount of inventory we need from you. So my recommendation, my action item is keep that 45 to 60 days worth of inventory in there. But also if you have an evergreen product that's not highly seasonal, follow Amazon's recommendations of what they want you to send in. And I would argue if you start to follow those, you'll probably see a greater uptick in your conversion rates because they're going to be 1 day available. If it's seasonal, completely disregard that because we have a lot of seasonal products, and Amazon's recommendations for seasonal products absolutely make no sense. So don't follow that for seasonal products.
Yeah.
All right. Action item number 2 here is focus on the AOV, right? And it's not just one thing of, hey, just increase your price by $1, right? It is actually more than that, as you mentioned, Ari, which is, hey, what can you say in your secondary images or in your A+ content or your brand story to feature your hero product or feature one of your higher price products in your portfolio to hopefully get an upsell, right? And it just comes back to like focus on the brand and focus on what can you do to showcase your other products that cohesively work together. And that thereby you can increase your average order value from those customers. My third and final action item here is going through like creating a checklist, just like you talked about here, Ari, which should be just a very systematized checklist that you can assign to one of your team members to say on a monthly basis, we look at this, on a weekly, we look at that, and on a daily basis, we look at these things. That's 101. And if those are if anything, if you don't have processes and a checklist like that today, that's got to be your first action item in all reality, because there's a lot of low hanging fruit and you might just be tripping over yourself thinking that you've got bigger problems on hand when in all reality, it's just a simple product type or category browse node change that you need to make to your brand. So, all right, those are my 3 actionable takeaways. Anything I missed?
No, spot on, man. It's great. Thank you for summarizing those.
Awesome. All right, as we wrap things up here, I'd love to ask each guest the following 3 questions. So we'll start from the top. Number 1, what's been the most influential book that you've read and why?
0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. Just fundamental working backwards from goals and understanding kind of how ideas start and how they become realities. Great book. Quick
Awesome.
read, very, very functional.
Great recommendation. Question number 2. What is your favorite AI tool or maybe Chat GPT prompt that you think's been a game changer that other people need to be using?
Yeah, so that's a great one. We record all of our calls with Fathom Note Taker, which is a great AI tool. We have a call log. We use a CRM system called Monday.com, and we log all of the calls. When my business partner, his name is Matt Brown, I didn't mention him at all, but he's the super genius behind Deep Sea Commerce. When we have disagreements, or other team members are clashing heads, or we want to do X and they want to do Y, putting the transcript through AI and basically trying to ask questions such as, why is this person feeling this way? Or what is his key points? Where is the actual clash? Is a really helpful way to kind of disseminate a lot of the noise, a lot of the emotional stuff, and really boil it down to a binary of like, this is where it's at.
I love that use case. And I myself, I have a bot that follows me to all of my meetings as well. And you'd be surprised how many times it's helpful to go back and reference. So
totally. It's amazing.
Great use case. All right. Third and final question. Who is somebody that you admire or respect the most in the e-commerce space that other people should be following, and why?
So I'm an OG from the inner circle. So Brandon Young, I have a lot of respect for kind of showing the way to a lot of sellers. And he's just a genuinely sweet, awesome guy who wants to help. I also, I've been following Ezra Firestone for a long time. I think it's really important for brands to understand, Amazon is a sales channel. It is an amazing sales channel, but it is a sales channel, and Ezra is very vocal about that. Also, his personal life story is very inspiring, and I think it's, coupling success with personal triumph is really meaningful.
Definitely. Those are 2 great recommendations as well. If you're not following those individuals, go follow them now.
Definitely.
All right. This has been fantastic. If people want to learn more about you, they want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
Easy. Yeah. So deepseacommerce.com. That's deep sea, SEE, as in deep sea commerce.com. There's a contact feature at the bottom of the website. It's a fun website, so enjoy. Or just email me, Ari, A-R-I, at deepseacommerce.com, DEEPSEE, commerce.com.
Awesome. Well, Ari, thanks for joining the show today. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thanks, Josh. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening. Visit ecombreakthrough.com for more information. If you've enjoyed today's episode, the best way you can show your appreciation is by clicking the subscribe button and quickly leaving a review. See you again next time.